Hello and welcome back to the Wool Sea Knitting channel. My name is Rachel, I am your host, and this channel is my chatty outlet to talk all things knitting with occasional guest appearances by other crafts. Today is Sunday, March 24th, and it's spring. The equinox has passed. The clocks have changed here in North America. I don't know about other places. So I get to see the sun now after 5 p.m. and I feel a lot of energy that has been channeled into my knitting. For a while, I'm gonna look at you guys. For a while, I didn't film a podcast because I didn't think I had anything new or interesting to show you. And then I was thinking about my week ahead. I'm heading back to Toronto for the Easter long weekend soon. And I kind of realized that if I don't film now, there's stuff that you might never see. And I actually do have 3 finished objects and a new cast on and a whole bunch of plans. So the sun exists and I think I'm gonna do my best to take advantage and film today. So first things first, what I'm wearing is something that I think I talked about last video. I talked about sewing the buttons on. Did I show you what it looked like on? Did I wear this? I don't think so. This is the Cassia cropped cardigan by Refined Knitwear. I would say it's an okay pattern. Like, I wouldn't go out of my way to recommend it, but I wouldn't say avoid it at all costs. There are a lot of little translation errors or small, like, actual pattern errors that if you've ever knit before or made a cardigan before, you'll probably catch, but it doesn't, then immediately go to the top of the list of things that I'm like eager to recommend to you guys. I think the first example of that being, it's called the Cassia cropped cardigan, but that actually just means that it has a V-neck as opposed to a round neck like the original. The original also is meant to have puff sleeves with a bunch of rapid increases at the top of the shoulder to create that effect that I ignored because I just wanted a fitted V-neck cardigan that would be a warmer going out top, like for going for dinner or drinks with my friends in slightly cooler weather, and that is exactly what it has been. I've been wearing it a lot the past couple months to suit that exact purpose and really been enjoying it. I made this in a combination of Emily C. Gillies mohair in the color Sandstone and Malabrigo Ultimate Sock in the color Rosalinda. And then I used these acrylic fake pearl buttons for the closures. And I finished the knitting of this almost exactly a year ago. And then I took 4 months to weave in the ends. And then I took another 6 months to add the buttons because I can be really lazy when it comes to finishing. And that's something I have been trying to work on this year. I have been going back and fixing things that have been made clear do not work and stuff that I recently made or made ages ago, and trying to go back and weave in ends in all the projects that have been languishing because of a lack of end weaving. And I feel like this is a great example of that. I let it sit in the corner unworn for almost a year because I didn't want to weave in some ends and I was too lazy to add buttons. And the second I did, and I thought of this project as something of a failure. And the second I actually did those 2 things, I realized that it was a success, not a failure, something I really like, I wear a lot, and is exactly what I wanted, a fun, feminine, girly, going out with the girls kind of sweater. And I get quite a few compliments on it when I wear it out. So I wanted to show you this on because you have never seen this on me before unless you follow me on Instagram. And I'm really happy with it. These buttons were like 80 cents a pop at Good Grief Yarn and Provisions in Toronto. And I really think that they add a lot to the sweater because I don't ever wear this undone. I wear this as a top. And the buttons, I think, really seal the deal. So that's what I'm wearing. It also feels very appropriate for my first podcast of spring. And yeah, don't skimp out on finishing. Knitting is not the only important part of a knitting project. Surprise, surprise. Okay, so that's this. Oh, this is also not a very size inclusive pattern. I looked far and wide to find exactly what I was looking for, the gauge, the fit, the exact placement of where the V goes. And this is the best I could find while removing the the puff sleeves. But yeah, it's a V-neck sweater pattern. I like it. It's a DK weight. I'm very happy with the results, but not much to write home about. The real lesson is just weave in your ends and sew in buttons. You'll be happier. In terms of actual finished objects, like I said, have 3. First is the Ozetta Lakes Pullover that I made for my brother in Barocco Vintage, and I want to say the color Oat Heather or Oatmeal Heather. I'll have it down below as well as linked. It is I want to say 40% superwash wool, 40-something% acrylic, and then like 8% nylon blend. It's a bit of random numbers, but it's great for gift knits. It's great for babies. It's soft, it's machine washable, it's machine dryable, and I wanted something for my brother that would be very easy to care for. This is something that I've been making him for a while and was my primary project for a long time. So I'm happy to see it mostly done. On the point about leaving in ends, I have 11 left to go because I couldn't wet splice my yarn together as I went through because, like I said, this is mostly synthetic fibers, and this pattern just has a lot of ends to weave in because you start with the 2 saddles, which then have ends, and then the front and the back, and there's just a lot of picking up and, you know, stuff like that. I also used some leftover Rose Hill DK sock yarn. It's some superwash merino nylon blend for the inside of the collar for 2 reasons. One, I just like doing this as a personal signature. I think it's fun. I think it's a cute way to use up leftover scraps from other projects that are soft that you want to wear against your neck, and it's just a fun secret, like a fun little I don't know, added bit. My words are not super accessible to me today, but I hope you understand what I mean. And when my brother tried on my Lakes pullover, which was the inspiration for this, he decided he wanted as close to an identical sweater as he could get while having it actually fit him instead of me. He said, oh, for the inside, could I have it be like a greeny blue as opposed to the red that I had used? I guess assuming it was a pattern feature as opposed to something that I added for my own reasons. So I did, and I like it. I think it looks really nice when it's, you know, when you're holding it up without a neck in the collar, to have that little pop. And he has a little bit of, you know, superwash merino next to his neck. I also do this because I like to knit with woolier or more rustic wools, even though I have sensitive skin. And most of the time I just push through it and pretend that I don't find it irritating. Like, I find this kind of irritating, but only for the first few minutes of wearing it, and then I kind of just forget. But my neck is, and the bottom of my throat are quite sensitive, so I usually, if I can, for a folded neckband where it's easy to kind of control the inside, I usually go for a softer yarn. And if the gauge is different, I don't find it to be a problem because you can sew in elastic to kind of cinch it back in again anyway and hide that maybe wobbliness. Another thing I did, I followed Emily of High Fiber Knits' suggestion that she, I think, got from Mel of String Things by Mel to knit in elastic over the fold to keep it stretchy. Instead of sewing it in afterwards, I had the elastic that she mentioned already, so I went ahead and did that, and I think it's a really nice touch. I think it has left it pretty elastic. I don't know, it's kind of hard to show you while I'm also holding it up. I don't think it added bulk. You can't really see it unless you look, and so I did it for 3 rows over the fold here to hopefully keep it cinched in and not flopping out with time and with wear. I thought that was a very neat trick. And besides that, I didn't modify this pattern very much except for picking up a little bit more stitches than was suggested across the saddles and in the arms. I always picking up stitches in a stockinette garment to be a suggestion more than anything else because my row gauge is usually not exactly what the pattern specifies. And if it's stockinette and it's not going to interrupt a pattern, I don't really think it matters. I knit this in a medium for my brother to give him, like, I don't know, maybe 2 inches of positive ease because he found the small, which was a very fitted garment on him, to be just a little bit too restrictive in the shoulders. And so I sized up, but just to be safe, I also picked up a couple more stitches along the back saddles to shape the shoulders than the pattern specified because the main thing he said beyond making it longer is, could I have it slightly roomier in the shoulders? Also because I find the pickup rate along the saddles to be a little bit, because it's pretty, the stitches you pick up are kind of spaced out, I find that it doesn't look as clean on my version. So I picked up just a little bit more to make it look a bit neater. And I think that that worked on this version, which is the benefit of knitting a pattern twice. And I also picked up more stitches, I think 6 total. I have it on my Ravelry page. I can link that below if you really want to know the precise numbers, but I think I picked up 6 more stitches per sleeve as well, because I want to make sure this fits him. He's taller than me, and I find that if you pick up a lot of stitches or pick up not very many stitches compared to the actual circumference of the hole for the sleeve, it kind of cinches the body up, and then again has that kind of less neat bumpy appearance along that picked up edge. Just a matter of personal preference. So I did more to make it look neater and then also make sure that the torso was as roomy as possible and I didn't lose length for, I think, a pretty avoidable reason. And then yeah, beyond that, I just knit the size medium 2 pattern to the length of a 5'9" individual. And he will be receiving this later this week when I see him in Toronto. I have another 11 ends to weave in. This had so many ends to weave in. I have been spacing them out. I do about like half an hour of end weaving every few days, and that has been a good pace. I don't want to sit and get them all done at once because first of all, that would take up pretty much a whole evening of knitting time. And second of all, I find that the longer I weave in ends, the sloppier I get because I just want to get it done. But because this is such a sleek yarn, I don't trust that it's going to hold if I do a sloppy job. So I also don't want to give a sloppy gift. So I'm pacing it. And I think with 11 ends left, 2 more days of that and I'll be done. But I'm really happy with the way it looks. I think it's really soft. I did a better job, unfortunately, picking up stitches for the neckband at the back than the front. There's a small hole that bothers me just a little bit right here. I don't think anyone else is going to notice, but I know it's there. Also, normally I knit down and cast off when I'm finishing a folded collar because I like knitting, but I've done that so many times in the past few months that I got kind of tired of it. So I just cast off and then sewed it down later after blocking, and I forgot how fast and easy that is. Sometimes I have this aversion to doing things that aren't knitting for my knitting projects, like sewing stuff together, and then every time I have to sew something small like this, I think this was faster and easier and I should have been doing this for a while. But I think it's also just fun to vary what I'm doing for the most part, and so yeah. I'd consider this a winner of a project. It took me a month of primary knitting, but with other projects at the same time, and I'm happy. I'm happy with how my sleeve bind-offs ended up. I think it looks very neat, and I hope he gets a lot of wear out of this. So that's my first finished object, my second Ozetta Lakes. I love it. I hope he loves it. It's a good pattern. I really like all the short row shaping at different intervals. I think it keeps things interesting. And I just typically really enjoy Ozetta designs. My next finished object is just a 2x2 rib hat. I go into more detail on this in the vlog that I posted a couple weeks ago. It was a what I knit in a week thing, and it was mostly my 3 finished objects that you will see now. This was knit in hand-dyed yarn that I got at Les Laines Biscuit in Montreal. It's a nice yarn store, I recommend it. This was a Quebec hand-dyed yarn. It's a superwash merino 90% and then 10% silk blend in the color Poseidon by Louise Robert Designs. And this is what it looks like on. And it was just a nice hat. I was at a point where I didn't have any travel or lunchtime office knitting or Zoom meeting knitting, so I cast on this hat also because I only have one hat that I wear on a regular basis and I wanted a second. Green is my favorite color, and this was a really nice souvenir yarn. Like I said, I have sensitive skin, so the superwash merino silk has been really good for my forehead. Very little itch, and I just wanted a basic 2x2 rib hat that was going to have the double folded brim, so 3 layers of fabric to keep my ears warm, because I find a lot of hats to be not very warm compared to my balaclava. And I mostly followed the head sock pattern by Amanda Sund, which is a free pattern I've made as a gift before and really like. I modified the starting stitch count. I think I cast on, I said it in the vlog, so I think it's 112 or 118 stitches. You can modify this pretty easily to match different yarn weights. You just go up or down by intervals of 16. Because it's a free pattern, I can tell you. So I went down 16 stitches from whatever the smaller of the 2 sizes is on the pattern. And the main draw of the headstock is the decreases to shape the top. I think a lot of people find ribbed hat decreases to look kind of messy or not super cute, and the headstock has you do them inside out. So technically, when I was knitting, it looked like I was doing this. Which I like. I think that they look really nice. But because I was folding this 3 times and I was doing this in 2x2 rib, I did 2 knit rows so that when I flipped it up like this, you would have the purl bumps to encourage that fold, which I really like. But because you then do this bit inside out, I did a short row hidden in one of these brim layers to make sure that the 2 inside out things that I did would cancel each other out. So I would have both the row of purl stitches and the pretty decreases visible in the final garment. And when I say garment, I mean object. And I'm really happy with this. However, there was a brief moment where it seemed like this was going to end in disaster because I didn't swatch. I just picked 3.75 millimeter needles, which is a size I like, and cast on a hat, guessing that, you know, I generally know my DK weight gauge. I know that a 2x2 rib hat's gonna be stretchy, and I knit it so that it was comfortable and I had a little bit more room than you see at the top here. And then I blocked it and it just, like, the stitches were super loose. Nothing was sticking to each other because it's a superwash and silk blend. And instead of fitting like a hat, it was almost like a bonnet. Like this bit was hanging almost around my chin. It was so long. It was like coming up to here and it was just way too big. The stitches did not, it was almost like a mesh. Like the stitches were not even really touching each other. They were almost like avoiding each other. And I started to lay it flat to dry. And then a few hours later, I looked at it and I said, what is laying it flat to dry going to do to fix this problem? Nothing. So I put it in the dryer. Under close supervision, I put it in. Thankfully I was doing laundry, so it didn't feel like a waste of a load. I put it in on low for 20 minutes with other stuff, and I was checking like every 4 minutes while I was weaving in my first round of ends of this. And it was not really shrinking. It was drying, but it wasn't really shrinking. I think I did this for just so many loads of laundry that night, just checking on this thing and drying everything on low. And it wasn't shrinking. And so finally, because it was also getting late and I wanted to go to sleep, I said, you know, to hell with it. I'm just going to put this for 30 minutes on high. This is not a precise formula. Do not do this with your knits. If you're going to try and shrink something in the dryer, really be careful, really watch what you're doing. I'm just explaining to you my process. And that actually finally felt it. And then I went to sleep and said, it's gonna be what it is gonna be in the morning. And it was perfect. So because this was superwash, I think that it really did need to actually be on high heat to felt, because that's the whole point of superwash. You should be able to toss this in the washer and dryer and avoid a felting disaster. But now these stitches are pretty close together. They're sort of fuzzy and caught amongst each other, which is exactly what I wanted for a warm hat. It is ever so slightly smaller than the finished object I had before I got it wet the first time, but in a way that's still really comfortable and fits. And I try to avoid volume at the top of my hats because I don't like the look of it, but I have enough volume here that if I want to be warm and bring this as close to over my eyes as possible to protect my forehead, I have enough space and it's not slowly sliding up my head like some hats have in the past. And I'm happy. So this was overall a good project as well, to remind me that we can fix a lot of things that go wrong, and just made me happy that I have access to a dryer in my apartment. So I've been wearing this a lot at the end of the cooler months because it's still below freezing most days, especially on my walk to the bus stop for work. But you know, it's pretty warm. Like, it's not balaclava weather anymore. My last finished object is one that I'm pretty proud of, even though I know objectively they look kind of a little wonky. Finally finished my second spiral mitt, except for this end, but you know, one thing at a time, to match my first spiral mitt, and I'm almost done the pattern. I think I will also include in this video a link For the call for testers, I'm looking for just a handful of testers. This is going to be a free pattern, and I would like ideally just a couple people to be able to look it over and knit it up and tell me if things are wildly unclear or I have massively messed something up, and to have maybe, if possible, 1 or 2 people who are willing to have me share their photos or have themselves share their photos on social media of what this looks like, not in really janky hand spun. But yeah, these are my unnamed spiral mittens. They might just be called spiral mittens that I knit in the color changing is hand spun that I did. And the green is Jamieson and Smith jumper weight 2-ply. And this is a pretty loose gauge for a mitten because I needed to match the hand spun. And so for my size, which this is a 8 1/4 of an inch finished mitten palm circumference, this is 28 stitches and 4 inches, which is kind of loose for a colorwork mitten. Like I'm about to start a mitten pattern where the gauge is something like 35 stitches per 4 inches because you usually want something as tight as possible. So this is a little bit more of a spring mitten, which is part of the reason why I went with these colors. And also, if you live in a slightly warmer climate but still want mittens. So if you would be interested in testing this with me and chatting about that, I'll put a link below. I want to give people as much time as they need to finish them because, again, where I am, we're heading into spring and summer anyway. And I understand in the Southern Hemisphere, you don't typically need mittens a lot. So I understand this is not going to be a high priority project for anybody, but it's a free pattern, so it doesn't really matter when I release it. I just want to share it with you guys. A couple things to note about this pattern. My mittens took about, weighed together, were 60 grams, and you use almost equal amounts of the contrast in the main colors. And when I say contrast in main, there's not really contrast in main because it's not like one is main. I just mean I used a color changing and then a solid. But each yarn took about 30 grams, 35 grams for me to make mittens. As you can see, one is accidentally a little shorter than the other. Oops. So another thing I would be interested in testers being able to report back is how much yarn these took so that I can give a more accurate estimate for yarn. I feel like this would still be good for scrap busting. I think that most sizes and most people would be able to get a full pair of mittens out of 2 50-gram balls of between fingering to DK weight yarn. It's just basically one set of numbers and pattern, etc., and charts, and you vary the size by changing what needle and gauge you're using. And I've done the math to what I think would mean what gauge you want to end up with certain finished mitten circumferences. Hopefully I'm right. And so I think that if you wanted to, example, make a bigger mitten, I would use a light DK. If you wanted to make a smaller mitten, I would use a fingering weight yarn. And that would also affect how lightweight or how thick and warm and insulating these are going to be. So those are some notes as well. Things that I'm looking for testers are to let me know if that kind of model of have a little bit of freedom and vary your yarn weight and your needle size to achieve different gauges and therefore different finished mitten sizes is good, if the pattern is clear, and how much yarn you personally needed to make it. These were knit in the same hand spun, but for some reason this looks so much more muted than this one. I kind of like that, and I'm just really happy. I've been wearing them around the past few days despite the fact that I have a couple ends still hanging out, and it's my last finished object of the week. So moving into whips. My storm sweater is almost done. This is something that's going to also require some, post hoc adjustments, but I still have most of the sleeve to go. This has just been my back burner project for so long. However, it's almost warm weather, and I started this in November, and I think it's time I finish it. It's not because I feel like I always have to say this, it's not because I don't like the pattern. I do like the pattern, it's just I've been knitting gifts, I've been knitting more seasonally focused things, or things that I would like to have the pattern done, so I've been focusing on this, or things that are easier to take to work. And so as a result, this has usually been at the bottom of the pecking order when it comes to my attention. However, I really want to finish the knitting this week. I specify the knitting because I don't mean the sweater, because I'm pretty sure I'm going to have to unravel a significant portion of the body or cut part of it out and graft, but I'll get to that. Right now, I'm on the third motif of the sleeve out of, for me and my squat little arms, third motif of 6, then plus the rib. Other people have mentioned this, but it's a little tricky to get the sleeve sizing and the body sizing right because you don't want to interrupt any of these blocks, but then you're kind of going in 3-inch intervals. And that's fine. I just tried to make mine a little bit longer. Hard to believe, seeing how short it is, but it's a pretty wide body. And I think it's a lot of fun. I really enjoy knit purl textures, and I really like this yarn. I think it will give the sort of vibe of a vintagey cream fisherman wool sweater, except it's not cables. It's in that modern Scandi boxy style with knit purl more graphic textures. And I think it'll be really cute. The one thing is the body does not fit me. So I knit it long. I knit it longer than I knit most sweaters, in part because of this motif, like you have to knit it in intervals of 3 inches issue, which is not really an issue, it's just part of the pattern. And because I thought, why not try and make something a little bit longer? Unfortunately, that I have found does not suit me. I think also I have blocked the body, but not the sleeves, because I wanted to see how the yarn would block out. And that has created this really impressive fold line that simply will not go away. I think I'd have to steam it after blocking it, but it makes my body look so weird when I wear it. And then the rib was cinching pretty aggressively, so I looked like I was wearing a potato sack, but without potatoes. And I didn't like it. And I've showed my friends, they all agree, something about that looks strange. So I'm torn between 2 options, and I will have to decide, ideally with your input, once I finish this sleeve, what to do, so I can just block it one more time and be done with it. I even got the hem, just the rib hem wet and stretched it out for a couple days when I was away to see if that would help, and it kind of helps, but I think I'm just hoping that it's the fold line issue. Here's some photos that kind of illustrate this. I find it doesn't show up as aggressively on camera, which is kind of annoying because I would like to be able to show you guys what I'm talking about. But I'm always going to have this folded up, so unless I'm wearing it, and so I feel like that's always going to be a problem, which is a little frustrating. I'm hoping I can just steam it out to loosen it a little bit, but I'm thinking either I cut out 1 or 2 full blocks and just graft it back together, or I unravel it and then split the hem, maybe both. And that's kind of my thing. I know it needs to be shorter. I can't figure out if I should unravel the hem and split it and reknit it, or if I should just graft it and that will be enough, because I will be annoyed if I go to the work of cutting into it, taking 2 sections out, grafting it back together, and then I still had to undo the ribbing when I could have just ripped out the whole thing and reknit the rib to begin with. I don't mind grafting, but I would be annoyed if I had to go out to all the work of grafting only to then just reknit the rib anyway. And I'm quite torn. I think originally I was only going to take out 1 section, so lift it by 3 inches, and then I think I'm going to actually do 2, so it's more cropped, because I was looking at some other bulkier sweaters that I have that sit at where lifting it by 3 inches would have it sit, which is kind of at the widest point of my hips. And I really like it, but I have like 2 or 3 other sweaters that are very similar boxy big fits that do the same thing. So I think it might be fun and fresh and, you know, different to have it just be almost cropped and sit closer to just a bit below my belly button. I think that would be cute, especially since this is going to be a bit more of a casual sweater for me anyway. And that would still keep me warm and I think free of drafts. So that is kind of what's plaguing me here. You can see I did the contrast button band again. There is something else that's bothering me that I'm not sure if I'm going to fix, but I'm really preoccupied about the actual fit issue for now. So at the very end of folding over and knitting and binding off this collar, I started to pick things up at a slant and I didn't notice until it was too late. So if you look right here in this corner, it's a little slanted. And I know most of the time that's going to be covered by my hair, so I'm not letting it bother me. And because it's at the very end and I haven't woven in the yarns for that, I could undo it and redo it. It's just so tedious. So I think I might leave it, but currently there are a couple issues with this that need to be addressed before I know I'm going to wear it, and before I will go to the work of weaving it on my ends. So yeah, I guess really the theme of this podcast episode is the importance of finishing and fixing issues as they arise and fixing issues as they arise. But I do think it speaks to how I've grown as a knitter over the past now 3 years of knitting, that these things don't completely catch me, you know, off guard, and I feel like I have some ability of how to troubleshoot, which was something that really intimidated me in knitting at the beginning, is how do you troubleshoot? What do you do? So that's my storm. What I'm going to take with me to knit in Toronto, you ask? Well, I have started a new sweater project. It is the Georges sweater. It's actually just called the Georges. I'm saying Georges sweater because it's a sort of a sweater, but it's also sort of a cardigan in shape and construction, by Colibri by Johanna. And I'm knitting this as a wedding present for my dear friend Carolyn, who's getting married in June. So she's also a knitter, and she's the one who gave me these yarns from her stash. And she chose the pattern. I think I sent her some suggestions, but she chose the pattern. And she gave me the yarn from her stash that are a little special to make it. So this is Surrey silk from Woolerton Estates, which is a Quebec-based hand dyer. She lives in Quebec, so that's really nice, that she and I bought together when we went to Knit City Montreal last year. I also got this yarn at Knit City Montreal, Canadian locally grown, or Canadian grown, Canadian milled. That's fun for me, out in Manitoba. And then also this Lanagato mohair, silk mohair, that her friend, one of her dear friends that she's had since I want to say middle school, who is Danish, brought her from Copenhagen, so that's really special. And they have combined this kind of pinky one and this sort of taupey one with some variation, have combined into this really lovely pearlescent fluffy fabric. I think it looks kind of champagne-y, it looks kind of pearly, it changes in the light. And this is a very common wedding knit. The designer herself wore it for her wedding, and I see a lot of other people wear it for their weddings. I don't know if Carolyn will wear this at her wedding because her wedding will be in a warmer month, but the idea is that this is a gift for her because she is getting married, and she will wear it maybe then and hopefully after, but just so I'm just making her a gift because she's my dear friend. And she is someone who really appreciates handmade gifts because she is someone who gives a lot of handmade gifts, so she really understands the amount of time that goes into this. However, this is pretty fast because it's a 15 stitch gauge. I think I'm knitting it closer to a 15.5 stitch gauge, and I went up a needle size, but I'm happy with the fabric. And I also went up a size. She was kind of in between sizes, like she was barely in the next size up. So I knit that knowing that it has more ease by just a smidge than is recommended. So knitting it a smaller gauge will have it be a little bit closer to the actual size. She has seen the swatch. I saw her last weekend, and she, confirmed that she liked the fabric as it's knitting up. And it's been, I don't know, I mean, you're basically making a V-neck cardigan. However, there's nothing majorly wrong with it. I think so far the math has worked out. There's just a lot of little things that I personally, maybe it's just the mood that I've been in, have found a little bit irritating, or at least non-standard in terms of how we write patterns in English. This was translated from German, and I got the pattern, downloaded it, read it through, and immediately was like, that's strange, and what's going on there? And if I start coughing, it's because I keep throwing this around and there's fluff in the air now. But I started knitting because I have, 3 years of obsessive knitting under my belt, and so I figured it would be fun, and it really has been. There's just a few things, like, for example, oh, and I should have checked because I saw a couple things that had me going, and then immediately checked Ravelry, and every comment is about people saying the English translation is strange, or there are errors, or this is kind of not clearly written. And then a lot of the Ravelry projects are people saying this is not clearly written, and then still ending up with lovely finished objects, which I think is what's going to, or knock on wood, what I think is going to happen here. it's just, I think I need to flag this to you. You knit this flat with a sort of gradual tapering V-neck to shape the bit at which becomes the back with the bow, or the wrap cardigan in the front, depending on how you want to wear it, which is a very beautiful design, and I like the versatility of how you can wear it. And so the instructions for how to do that taper, if you've ever knit a cardigan with anything with a V-neck before, will be pretty familiar to you, but it's still written kind of strangely. So it's knit back and forth, as you can see, and you knit every stitch, and then the next row it goes purl every stitch, parentheses, except for the edge stitches. Okay, why isn't it knit one, purl everything, knit one? And then the next row, you have, you know, the instructions for the right side, knit blah, 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 blah. For the next wrong side, it goes purl all the stitches like you did in the, you know, whatever number the first purl row is. Do I keep knitting the edge stitches? Am I establishing a selvage? It's never discussed again. So I'm just going ahead and knitting the first and last of every stitch for a slight garter edge, assuming that's what she wanted. The parentheses threw me off. There's several sections where you're told what you should be doing for the most, and then at the very end of the sentence it says, except you should have done this for the first. And if you're reading, you'll probably get to that before you actually start, but it's non-standard and not clear and a little annoying. Like, instead of saying increase, knit, 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 or purl, purl, purl around, increase, it goes knit or purl around, except you should have increased here and you shouldn't then increase again here. And I'm just kind of like, about that. There's also a point where after you split for sleeves, you split on the right side, which, you know, you normally do. I don't feel like I'm giving away a trade secret there, which leaves you on the purl side. And then, but the next row is an instruction for knit rows, and then another instruction for purl rows. So then there's no instruction for that purl row in the middle. So what I did was I just took the instruction for the purl row that I was supposed to do 2 rows later and did that here. And I don't think it's gonna make that much of a difference. But there's just little things like that that I find are errors. And a lot of people have said that they've reached out to the designer for things like that and have not heard back. And this pattern came out like 2 years ago and there haven't been updates as far as I can tell. So I wanted to flag that for people. That said, all of these are things that with any amount of knitting experience, you will be able to intuit the next thing you should be doing, and it'll be fine and it'll still be lovely. But the pattern itself is a little bit like, huh? And I don't mean the differences that we like to cite a lot between Scandinavian and North American pattern writing styles, where, you know, a Scandinavian pattern will say cast on 100 stitches and a North American pattern will say cast on 100 stitches using the long tail cast on. Here's a tutorial. It's just things that are like not standard notation. So I actually went and checked German, and the German was also written with the same like, and then you do this at the end. So I just wanted to say that. However, it's been fun. Like, it's a fast knit and soft, fluffy yarn. There's a couple diagrams to show what you should be doing for the bow and for the finishing that I think are pretty clear. And like I said, like, even though I'm grumbling, I so far think it's going to be totally fine. And the people who are grumbling online also are like, this was a little annoying, but I have a lovely finished object. So because when I show people this, they all go, oh, that's so nice. I wanted to let you know. I'm not trying to warn you off this completely, just I want you to go in with eyes wide open. So the goal for this one is to finish this by the second weekend of April, where I will be seeing my friend Carolyn so I can give it to her. I think that's doable because, again, it's a 15 stitch gauge and I'm making one of the smaller sizes, so it's been going by pretty quickly. I think I only cast this on a week or 2 ago, and I'm already past sleeve separation, and there's no stitch. It's just stockinette, so it's going by pretty quickly. And this will be my main train knitting as I go to and from Toronto, which is like 4.5, 5 hours each way. And also while I'm doing family stuff and during the long weekend, since I get 2 days off. So that'll be really nice, and I am enjoying it. And it's just really nice to make something special for my friend, who I know will appreciate it because of the kind of person she is. So yeah, those are my 2 works in progress. And as you'll see, this one's almost over. And this one's all stockinette, which leaves me with the uncontrollable urge to cast on more stuff. So last night, I started swatching this yarn, which is, okay, I'm gonna show you the swatch first. Here's my swatch. This is a yarn I picked up last year and then never showed you guys because Carolyn and I filmed a Knit City Montreal haul that I was going to fold into a larger Knit City video, but I couldn't get my thoughts in order, and then you guys just never saw the yarn. So this is Orso Yarn Co. in their Blue Faced Leicester yarn. I think it's 80% BFL, 20% nylon. Yes, that is correct. Untreated BFL. However, they're a Quebec-based company and a lot of their stuff's in French, and so their base is PBF, which is Petite Face Bleue, which is Blue-Faced Leicester in French. And it is 115 grams and 390 meters. So it's kind of a thicker fingering weight or 4-ply. And it's sort of a vanilla base with peach and purple and blue and pink and green sort of painted on. Because it's non-superwash, it has a bit more of a watercolor effect in the hand-dyed final result than a lot more of the superwash, which can get, you know, a bit more of like precise blah and speckles and stuff. And I really like it, and I got 2. So 250 grams or 780 meters to make a sweater. And I guess I didn't really look at the meterage. I just thought 2 skeins of fingering weight yarn should be enough for maybe a bit of a looser or, you know, more fitted sweater in my size. And then now I feel like it's probably just a smidge light on yardage to actually, or meterage to get that done. But I did knit this swatch and I didn't like it, which is why I stopped, and it's so little. This is about 26 stitches in 4 inches. And I think it might still be a little too loose, which makes me then think I don't have enough. But I can't tell if it's too loose or my rowing out is just bothering me so much that I don't like it. And that's what the real issue is, because now that I use the Eastern purl, I purl Eastern style when I'm knitting flat, like for this or for this, I find that my purls are super loose, which is very, very good from a hand health standpoint. I'm able to purl for so much longer and so much more comfortably than I did before, but it means that I sometimes have to go down a needle size for this. So I think I might do that and then just all of a sudden like the product that I'm getting. But because I'm a little worried that I don't have enough yarn, and I think it would be hard to get more because they don't have a storefront, I would just have to track them down in a local yarn store and then hope that a local yarn store has this and is willing to ship. So this is the BFL base in the color Pony, P-O-N-E-Y. If that's a reference, I don't know to what, but I like it. And so I have been spending a lot of time browsing Ravelry trying to find the best pattern for this. For a while, I was looking at Jessie May's Cozy Classic Raglan Light, but I think that because this is a pretty light color, it's going to be too thin to wear. I think you'll be able to see what I'm wearing and it's going to look gappy and you're going to lose the hand dye because it's quite subtle. So I'm getting closer and closer to maybe casting on a hybrid cumulus tee, but at a looser gauge and making it with long sleeves to have it be more like a cumulus tee but in wool, so more like a blouse, but not the cumulus blouse, if that makes sense, because I feel like having it be a v-neck like this shape will save me some critical yarn that could then go to sleeves and a body. I'm also thinking that because this is untreated BFL, when I do this, it doesn't bother me. When I do this, it doesn't bother me, but I feel like sometimes that's a trick and it will bother me if I'm wearing a tight sweater close to my chest in untreated BFL. Even though BFL is, I think, on the softer side of wools, I'm just sensitive. So I'm thinking that will make this more of a springtime garment because it's very springtime in terms of like color story. So I think I might do that and just fingers crossed modify it all works out. I was also looking at the Beauty School top by Poison Girl Knits because it's fitted and I think I have enough yarn for it, but then I'm back at the issue of, is it going to be irritating against my skin? And if I go to all the trouble to knit a garment at a 28 stitch gauge and I don't wear it, then that is a huge waste of my time and also storage space of storing that sweater until I unravel it and do it for something else. I don't want to make a t-shirt out of it because it gets really, really hot and swampy here in the summer, and 100% or no, 80% untreated wool is just not going to work. I've learned this from experience. So I'm at a bit of a loss. I think I want something in stockinette to show off the hand-dyed color variation. I think it's very pastel pretty, but I'm not exactly sure. I think I might do my Cumulus T idea, but then go down a needle size on the pearls so it looks nicer. From a distance, I like it, but up close, I don't. So I think I'm going to sit on that and stew for a bit and see if something comes to me in a dream that guides me to the exact finished object that I like and the optimal knitting experience along the way. But that kind of started to cool my cast-on-itis because I was like, yeah, I need another sweater for immediately after finishing this. And then I started it, and then I've kind of stopped in my tracks because I don't feel confident moving forward. So that was a good thing I swatched. And I have literally started to cast on and then got distracted another pair of mittens. So you might think, Rachel, you literally just finished a pair of mittens. Yes, but this brings up my total mitten count to 2, and I wear mittens every single day. And so I feel like having 3 mittens is still good. And also the mittens that I will make that I have started to cast on. Here, you can see. Started to cast on. And not even finished. These will be the Flora Mitts by Jenny Penny. I will not bore you by talking about these mittens again. They've been on my to knit list for so long. I'm actually going to start doing it. This is Erica Knight local wool. I got it on sale at Wabi Sabi. I don't think they stock it anymore. Yeah, it's wool local. It's their fingering weight, Erica Knight. All of that, this was grown, sheared, milled, and dyed all within 50 miles of every other point of that process. And then of course shipped across an ocean to get to me in Canada. But still, I like that kind of, support someone's local. And it is 100 grams, is 450 meters. This is Bennett Blue, and this is Rosedale Pink. I think they will be very pretty together. And I like color work. I've been craving a lot of color work and also color and also whimsy. I have been salivating over the Fortuna's Wheel pullover that graced the cover of the last ever issue of Pom Pom magazine. Rest in peace. My friend and I are going to knit that together in late summer, early fall as our annual 2-person knit along. And until then, I have a strong color work itch that needs to be scratched. So I'm thinking these mittens will be part of it. I also really want to make the Birdsong pullover. This is what that looks like, but in a different weight of yarn and with a lot more positive ease. However, I have the main sweater yarn for that, but I don't, not in this pile, but I don't have contrast. And until I maybe make some more progress or choose a sweater project for once I finish my storm sweater, I don't want to go out and buy anything just yet. And yeah, a lot of things that are more on the whimsical side are really calling to me at this time, particularly when it comes to color work. There's another hat I want to make, but I don't think I have the yarn for it, so I will just simply look at the hashtag a lot on Instagram and think, what if? And I'm feeling my annual urge to crochet. So I might have a crochet finished object to show you next week. And when I say next week, I mean next video. But that's about where I am in my knitting. And I'm feeling good. I like what I'm making and the things I'm learning along the way. I am, I think, interested again in exploring new techniques. So I'm hoping summer will be a time where I'm able to do that and also get back into spinning a little bit more. And that is pretty much it for me this video. I don't have any acquisitions because I'm working on prioritizing my stash and being grateful for what I have, because these are all things that I have been waiting a long time to use. And also I'm going to Europe and getting LASIK, so my priorities are elsewhere at the moment. And I'm really happy. So that's about it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you guys are working on, or if you have any thoughts on these projects in the comments below. And we'll talk again soon. Okay. Bye for now.